Okay. Hello and welcome to Morbid Movies with Dom and Mary. Today we are going to be talking about the 2001 or 2000, it's 2000 film, Shadow of the Vampire. I can do it.
Champagne. I love it. I love it. Fantastic. Good start, as always. Mary, so yeah, Shadow of the Vampire is a fascinating film. It is meta. It is a film within a film. It is about the filming of Nosferatu, which is another good time for us to bring this up. It is November, late November here, well, here in the UK and for you in the US. But I believe Nosferatu comes out for you, the new one, in December, whereas it comes out for us in January. That's where I was going with that. Yeah, so a good time for us to review this film. A fantastic cast. Eddie Izzard is in there.
Mhm.
A lot of legends in film, TV across the board. I was absolutely enamored with this. It blew my mind when I saw the cast and also the plot itself. Just before we go in depth, Dafoe is absolutely amazing. The facial expressions are incredible. John Malkovich, of course, an icon across popular culture, and does a great job with playing the kind of mad director here. A fantastic cast and a great plot. And when you suggested it, I looked it up and I was not prepared when I watched the trailer for what I got in the film. Why did you bring this to my attention, and why are we doing it for the next episode of Morbid Movies podcast?
I mean, quite frankly, I'm a little bit surprised I didn't make you watch this years ago in college. But I chose it because mainly it's just such an interesting film and it has so many layers and I thought it would be a nice fit for us here. This is just a fun one too because not a lot of people have seen it. It's kind of almost forgotten. It's hard to even in the US. I had to do a digital rental because it's very hard to find. It's not really streaming anywhere.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
trying to resurrect it and bring more eyes to it felt like a good move.
I agree. I was fascinated really because I'd not heard of the director Elias Marriage. He had done some videos. I think he did Crypt Orchid for Marilyn Manson, and he's done a bunch of other videos, and
Yeah.
a film called Begotten, which I haven't been able to watch yet. But apparently, it features God in the opening moments, kind of
Oh,
disemboweling himself, I believe, with
that's why.
so yeah, very interesting. So I'm gonna watch Begotten after this. Lots of really interesting facts about the aesthetic. Lou Bogue, the cinematographer, shot with Kodak Vision, and to give it that kind of film stock, view, which is obviously what we see in Nosferatu. Again, I think the meta concept of this is fascinating, Mary. The fact that we are watching, or supposed to be watching, the filming of Nosferatu, and we are watching a vampire play an actor who's playing a vampire. A genius bit of kind of concept by marriage, and of course we can't forget this was Nick Cage's first produced film as well. So many interesting facts for people as part of this film, Mary.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. And I know when I was looking, I hadn't realized that Nicolas Cage was involved in this, but when I saw it, I kind of said, "Well, of course he is. This is so up his alley." But I do love the meta aspect of it, especially this time when I rewatched it. I also sat down and watched the original Nosferatu because I'd never seen it before. And one, I didn't realize how long that film was. It's an hour and a half. It's the same length as Shadow of the Vampire. But one of the things I found interesting is on top of the meta retelling, the events of Shadow of the Vampire of them filming in a sort of loose way mirror the actual plot line of Nosferatu. So it has like even like a third level beyond just the, sort of telling of, what if Max Schreck had actually been a vampire.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
found
because
that pretty interesting.
yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of kind of rumor, or not rumor, but kind of lore around Max Schreck that he was just this kind of method actor, not actually a vampire. And I thought that was really cool because in real life there was rumors that this actor could have been a
Hmm.
vampire. So I think that's fascinating as well that they managed to create this that a performer managed to create this law around themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and it's such a brilliant performance, and finally a movie that asks the question, like, are method actors really the worst?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth mentioning, like Willem Dafoe's performance in this. Not only did he get a nomination for, I believe it was an Academy Award, which is the only time a vampire role has gotten a nomination. It is actually what got him his role as the Green Goblin in Spider-Man,
No
because
way.
the producers saw this film and loved his performance, and I guess they went, "Now there's the unhinged man we need." So it actually led to a pretty big role for him, as he
Mm.
was definitely big before that, but I feel like Spider-Man made him so huge as an actor.
Absolutely. And you can see a lot of similar, one of my favorite things, and I'm going to talk about a couple of my favorite scenes from this film, but one of my favorite things about Defoe, and I think if you look back at his films, it's always a big part of his work, is his facial expressions.
Hmm.
The way he moves his face, the way he talks and the way he kind of purses
Absolutely.
it,
I mean, his whole body, even I would argue, as you watch him, is it's his posture too, and the way he, draws himself up and makes use of those awful fingernails and things like that. Like he just is so fully aware of the entire physical delivery.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The clicking of the fingernails as you bring
Hmm.
up there is a great asset to the film and a really kind of unsettling character trait. I think what's also worth mentioning here is I would argue that actually Malkovich's character is just as important and arguably to many who've documented this film when I've researched, a lot of people say that Malkovich's character, the director, of course, just as unhinged. The idea that we are so focused as a society on fame, all these other kind of things, celebrity. This director is so focused on the art of his film and getting this film that he actually doesn't really care about his cast. He doesn't care that he has brought this vampire, this dark presence into his film. He becomes so obsessed, and I think that's perfectly, alluded to in that final scene where he
Hmm.
literally is so focused on getting the result he does not care. And I think there's a wider commentary in this film on. If we're going to get philosophical, which I know we like to do here on Morbid Movies, on society and our obsession with getting our art across and getting a product across with the wider expense of other people. It doesn't matter what the cost is, so long as we get our vision out into the world. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Mary.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really interesting dimension of it is just how much Murnau is willing to sacrifice. And like, especially that scene where he's arguing with the vampire about who and is not expendable, like the whole, like, I don't think we need the writer argument it's not even about the people for him, it's that he can't finish his vision without certain people, because he definitely isn't, telling the vampire, like, don't touch the you know, local villagers or anything like that. It's very specifically, don't mess with the people I need to actually make this film. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, you're talking about specific scenes there, and as part of that scene, there is, of course, a confrontation between Defoe, between Malkovich, as actors, where we really see, the intensity of both performers, where they're about, it feels like they're about to fight, over the vision of the film. And of course, Defoe delivers the line. It's not really your production anymore. It's not really your film anymore. And I think there's again a wider conversation there about control, and who controls the vision of a film like this. Of course, Nosferatu has such a global appeal, but clearly this film creates its own law. What was the drama behind Nosferatu? Maybe this was there was some similar drama behind the original film. I love how this film, how Shadow of the Vampire, creates that law around this pre-existing, legendary film. But what I'm trying to say is there are many layers added to the lore of Nosferatu through this film, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I think it helps to, and I went looking into it. You have a certain amount of information you can find about Murnau and Schreck, but like Greta Schroeder, there's almost nothing about her life on the internet. So, it's very limited. A lot of the records on them, I think, were also lost in World War II since, this is a German film. And truthfully, Nosferatu was almost lost because the Bram Stoker's estate made a very concerted effort to try to destroy every copy of the film, and it was really truthfully only through piracy that the film was preserved, so we even get to see it anymore. So, because of that, people know the film but know so little about the making of it or the people involved. It gives you such a blank canvas to play with to build that lore, which I think
Yeah.
is very interesting for them.
I agree. I agree. I want to ask a couple of questions around favorite performances and also favorite scenes. Obviously, you have Udo Kier in there as well, legend in sort of in film, but all particularly horror. Hopefully, I get the pronunciation right of Cary Elwes.
Is that how you say? I have honestly no idea.
It's a very American Cary Elwes, but actually he's British, which is
Yes.
just,
I've been honestly saying Elwes my entire life because I have no idea.
yeah,
So
I think it's spelled Ewles. If anybody in the comments wants to correct us, but he's actually a British actor, but I feel like it's a very American spelling. But he doesn't age, of course, as a fan of alternative British culture. We must mention Eddie Izzard. I think he was perfect in his
Mhm.
role as well. For
Oh,
you
real
then,
quick, I think
go on.
Eddie Izzard switched to she, her pronouns, I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just to try and get that one.
Absolutely. No, you're right. Yeah. So for you then, particular stand-up performances and also favorite scene.
I mean, obviously, like Willem Dafoe, like it's hard because everyone's a strong actor, but in this film, but Willem Dafoe just just falls into that role so much that it's like I don't even I mean I'm sure the makeup helps too, but it's like you don't remember it's him at all, which is huge for me because there's so many times I watch a film and it's a good film, but it's like when I'm watching Tom Cruise, it's I don't forget he's Tom Cruise most of the time. It's just look at Tom Cruise running, that kind of thing. But it's like you forget that these are actors when you're watching it. It really draws you in, and it's very effective. I mean, in terms of favorite scenes, the we don't need to the writer film, but also the one Albin Grau and the writer whose name I can't think of are drinking schnapps, and he comes through and starts telling them about being a vampire and
Yeah, yeah,
his
yeah.
origins.
Yeah, it's also where I get my favorite one where we get the bat caught and then eaten in full
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne mode. I thought that was
Yeah, it's
very
so
cool.
gross and visceral, especially when you put it against him explaining how little he remembers of his origin because he is this vampire who, we usually think of, internally young and beautiful. This guy just keeps aging. So
Yeah,
he's just old. He can't remember pretty much anything about his origin. He has no idea how to make another vampire, and then he starts talking about his thoughts on the Nosferatu script and the things that, I had never thought until this movie came along about, the whole thing he's talking about this vampire who has no servants has to remember how to make a bed, how to cook food, just to fake being human, and how hard that would be after so many years of not having to do any of those things. And, as someone who read the original Dracula novel over and over again, it never once occurred to me that that would probably be a difficult thing to pull off after hundreds of years of not having had to roast a chicken.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting because, of course, we don't always think about. I'm always fascinated in stories about, what happens when the villains go to bed? What happens when the monsters aren't killing people? What does Jason Voorhees do when he's done, slaughtering people? Or, and I think this gives a really interesting take on that because actually we see it, Nosferatu, not Nosferatu particularly, but the idea that Willem Dafoe's character and really the central point of this film has to live a life outside of being a vampire, has to exist and pretend. And I thought that was really interesting because we don't often see that. We don't often see the aftermath, or getting up in the vampire getting up in the morning and the struggles of that before they go and do all the supernatural stuff that is often the center point and centerpiece of these films, the action films, the horror films, etc.
Well, it's interesting. I think that the vampire struggles differently to blend in because I feel like most vampire fiction, they tend to blend in, they're seductive, and nobody notices until they step in front of a mirror or actually bite someone. And in this one, in a lot of ways, he's just struggling to seem normal the whole way through. Like he just doesn't know how to act human at all. It's not a, and what's really holding it down is that most people don't want to believe in vampires at that point. It's the modern world they've moved past that, and it's not his behavior, it's everyone else's denial that's
Yeah.
keeping him from getting noticed because he's unhinged from day one when they start filming.
Absolutely, and again, a really, really interesting concept, and I would encourage everybody to check that out if you're a fan of goth culture, a fan of goth films, and of course, a fan of these legendary actors. Couple more, then, Mary. Of course, one of my favorite things about speaking to you about these films is you have some great facts about about these films when we do this research. One of my favorite facts is actually Nicolas Cage wanted to play the vampire, but then chose Defoe. They'd worked together previously. So a really good bit of awareness by Nicolas Cage, and obviously great from a production point of view. He actually wanted to star in the film, wanted to have that major role, but gave it to Willem Dafoe. And I think that was a really cool, kind of fact from my side of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it was a good choice too. Nicolas Cage is a great actor, but I think he would have brought a very different performance to the film, and I think it would have still been good. But DeVoe just, I think, understood the assignment in this case. And if anyone wants to see a Nicolas Cage vampire, that was it Renfield that came
Yes.
out a couple years ago
Yes.
is
Very good.
absolutely
Very
hysterical
good.
and amazing. Like just brilliant performance by him.
Yeah, yeah. So just to round us up, Mary, I would like you to recommend if you have any kind of other interesting meta films in or out of goth culture. Of course, this is a film within a film. It is celebrated as such. And again, a great precursor to obviously people should go and watch the original Nosferatu, but a great precursor to the upcoming Nosferatu that's coming out. Any other good meta or meta-like films that people should check out?
I'm not sure it would be completely considered meta, partially because I only half understand that term I keep throwing around. But I would say if someone's enjoys this kind of almost horror themed, but like backstage view story, another good choice would be Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, which is another, that one's from the 70s, and it's sort of a musical backstage musical, but it's a mashup of like Faust and A Portrait of Dorian Gray sent against the backdrop of like opening a rock concert hall in the 1970s. Obviously, I said Dorian Gray Faust. It's also Phantom of the Opera, obviously, is like implied in the title. So if someone's looking for something that's kind of unhinged and a little bit horror themed that has that behind the scenes showbiz vibe to it, that would definitely be a good recommendation.
Yeah, where can people find us, Mary?
Okay, well, let me pull up the info here. So, yeah, if you have a suggestion for a future episode or, you just want to let us know that we're awesome, you can email us at morbidmoviespod@gmail.com. We are on Instagram at Morbid Movies Podcast, Twitter at Morbid Movies Pod, on Blue Sky at Morbid Movies. And do you remember our TikTok off the top of your head?
I think it's Morbid Movies Pod.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure. I don't have that one written down.
it's all right. It's okay. Anything else you'd like to share before we finish up? Obviously, we've had a lot of support so far on the channel. We've been uploading music stuff as well. I was really a big fan of your Cure reviews. Yeah, anything you'd like to add before we finish up?
Just, like continue to like and subscribe and comment. And we love everybody's feedback and movie suggestions because maybe there's one we don't know about that would be perfect. So, just keep the input coming.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.